And welcome to another episode in Nothing Like a Good Book. In this particular case, we're talking an audiobook. So let me ask you this, folks. What if President McKinley had opted to wear a bulletproof vest and avoided assassination? And what if Coke just changed its age-old formula as a devious way to increase sales? And what if Burt Reynolds had said yes to the role of James Bond? Can you imagine that one? Well, these are all questions that Michael N. Smith and Eric Kassem dare to ask in their new Laugh Out Loud audiobook, 100 of the Worst Ideas in History, Humanity's Thundering Brainstorms Turned Blundering Brain Farts, with riotous results. Welcome, Michael N. Smith.
Well, great to be here, Mark. Always a pleasure.
You know, from skinny dipping presidents to toxic tooth fillings to hit singing groups that can't carry a tune, I got to say 100 of the Worst Ideas in History is a celebration of humanity's historical, hysterical, stinking, thinking, thundering brainstorms. That's right, folks. Stay with me. That turned into blundering brain farts, and the astonishing impact that they carry to this day. Now, that's a fact. So, Michael, you must be you and Eric must be big believers in the adage, those who ignore history are doomed to repeat it.
Well, you look throughout history and it seems to happen time and again. There's something in the news right now that harks back to the 1960s with the issue in Afghanistan.
Oh, yeah.
We not to get political, but we do seem to repeat history over and over again. So we thought, since history is not really taught all that enthusiastically in schools these days, that we might come at it from a different angle. This is not your father's history book. It's with humor and a reverence. We're celebrating some of mankind's most astonishing faux pas, foibles, and foul-ups. And one of the initiatives we have with the book is for everyone we sell, we're going to be donating either an audiobook or a printed book to local high schools and colleges here in California to maybe reinvigorate some interest in history. God knows that when I was in school, maybe when you were too, Mark, it was all about what we called dead guys and dates. That's what history was all about.
Well, that was about it, right?
We try in this book to humanize it, to make it something more accessible and engaging. In the audiobook in particular, we've got some of our Hollywood voiceover friends doing impressions, and we've got music,
all sorts
sound
of good
effects,
stuff. Yeah,
all sorts of good stuff. Yeah.
Well, John Kelly, who's from the Detroit Free Press, 5 stars he gives you. I mean, if you're looking, in fact, he quotes, if you're looking for a laugh riot based on true great ideas turned epic failures, check this audiobook out. History lessons were never so hard to believe and knee-slapping funny. You'll laugh until it hurts. Well, boy, could we do with that right now, to be honest with you.
Well, yes, and I hope the check cleared that I sent to him for that wonderful review. But no, he's a great guy. I'm glad he enjoyed the book. And we've been getting a good response on the printed book, and that's what encouraged us to create the audiobook. And since I'm, I guess, one of those rare authors that actually knows how to do video and audio production, since that is my main job, it seemed like a natural sidestep over to do the audiobook.
Well, Mike, you and Eric Kassem have decades of entertainment, writing, and production between you. You know how to deliver content that will have you in stitches, and you might learn something along the way as well. How did you guys start out putting this together?
Well, it's a funny story. We were at a party at my house, and this is one of those things, almost like the old TV show Cheers.
Yeah, I love
where
it.
you had Cliff, the mailman at the end of the bar. He's the know-it-all. Everybody rolls their eyes as he waxes on about things he knows and other people don't know, apparently. But we're at this party, and I had just met my co-author, Eric Kassem, and we hit it off pretty well. And we just, as the adult beverages started to flow, we began to share stories from our own personal Rolodex in our minds of, epic fails, bad decisions, things that seemed to be a good idea at the time but went terribly wrong. And as we ping-pong kind of back and forth with these tales, a crowd began to form around us at the party. And Eric would spin a yarn about the skinny dipping president, and I'd try to top him with the snack food that causes spontaneous elimination, as they called it. But by the time we were done and judging from the laughs and the oohs and the ahs from the admittedly slightly tipsy audience we had there, we thought we might have stumbled upon a cool idea for a book or maybe just a college level drinking game. We didn't know for sure. But since both of us are writers, Eric, I said that I already mentioned that I work for my own video advertising agency. And Eric is a writer as well. He's a former speechwriter, in fact, for President George H.W. Bush. He's written for the LA Times, New York Times, CBS News. So we kick around ideas all day long, and we have a great appreciation for what it takes to come up with a good idea and a lot of empathy when that seemingly good idea goes terribly wrong. Spent about 3 years. Mark, I don't know if you're familiar with this place, but we actually went to this thing called a library. It's where there are books. People are quiet. We did 3 years, as I said, of research and emerged with what Eric calls the creme de la creme of really stinking thinking.
Well, it's obvious, you guys have a great rapport together. I'm going to take a couple of excerpts, if I may. Here's one,
Sure.
folks. Nearly half a century after George Washington dons a three-cornered hat, he courageously crosses the Delaware River and defeats the British Redcoats. Now, President John Quincy Adams strips down to his birthday suit, swims naked in the Potomac, and leaves America red-faced. Oh, God.
that is right.
Oh, here's another one. An inventor since his teen years, Walter Hunt is Superman when it comes to conjuring up revolutionary innovations. The sewing machine, the fountain pen, and the repeating rifle, among others. But he's kryptonite, you know what that is, absolutely deadly when it comes to business. So while he put others profit from the products he creates, selling rights to his new invention, the safety pin, to a fellow called W.R. Grace for a mere $400. He misses out on the untold millions it earns over the years. Oh, my God, what a blunder on that one, huh?
Oh, yeah.
That's just a couple.
A
They're a lot funnier, I can assure you. But the audiobook is narrated by the authors and a slew, really, of other Hollywood voice actors. 100 of the Worst Ideas in History is a media masterpiece and the perfect companion while commuting, maybe summer traveling. You might like to get this as a gift. I think it's a ripper. Exercising or simply relaxing after a long work day, maybe, instead of sitting into some meditation in the armchair, put this thing on and you'll forget everything that happened during the day, I can tell you. Now, if you want to name drop any of these people, by all means do so.
Well, they are one of those, or some of those behind-the-scenes folks. We have Roger Rose, who's a former VH1 VJ. We've got Milt Lawrence, who is the voice of many cartoons and video games. We've got, who else? We've got Dave Jeremiah, who's a national voiceover for all kinds of commercials and infomercials. These are guys that we have worked with for a long time, and they were only too happy during COVID to shake off the rust from lack of work and say, hey, I'd like to be part of your audiobook. And they're so talented, have such great range, do impressions. We've got Milt does a great impression, for example, of Johnny Carson, of Al Gore, of Bill Clinton.
Wow.
So we've got all kinds of entertainment and political impersonations to boot. And then, as I said before, lots of sound effects as we talk about an army endeavor. We hear the bombs explode and we hear the music rage as the soldiers rush up the hill. So there's all kinds of production values, I think, in the audiobook that really a printed book just can't really bring to life.
No, it can't. So, you say that while you do have, higher aspirations of helping to reinvigorate an interest in history among students and adults for that matter, 100 of the Worst Ideas in History is ultimately a Schadenfreude book, taking glee in the misfortunes of others, because it does. Now, what would you want listeners to take away from this project, after all?
Well, what I'd like is not only to reinvigorate an interest in history, which I think is a crucially important element to today's life, because history does resonate even in the activities of today, but also, at the base of it all, this is an entertainment book, which as you hopefully are laughing, you're learning something as well. And I think as people come back out of the pandemic, as they get back into their cars and gyms and take trips, this is a perfect companion for that. In the book, no stories more than 2 pages with pictures, and in the audiobook, no story is longer than 2.5 minutes. So you can, in small bite-sized pieces, get an opportunity to learn something and maybe chuckle along the way.
Have you always been a history buff?
Well, Mark, not to brag, but in my high school of about 1,000 people, I was I was number one in grade point average over the 4 years in history. And I think that told me that there was something there for all of us, or at least for me, that I could sink my teeth into. As I said earlier, the dead guys and dates approach was not for me. But once I started digging into some of these historical facts and events, I learned that there was a very human element behind them. There were people not unlike all of us today, who were doing their best to understand and to roll with the punches and to do what they can do. And sometimes they succeeded greatly, but other times they had the best of intentions, but it didn't go quite the way they wanted it to go.
Right. But they're all factual. That's the thing.
Yeah, lots of research.
So you touched on the fact, what really prompted you to write 100 of the worst ideas in history. It just came about. Often some great shows, movie scripts, whatever, entertainment overall, comes from seemingly, situations and events that have occurred where you at least expect something would come out of it. And in this particular case, we're talking about a party where, a couple of smart asses who know what they're talking about, bloody, 100 worst ideas. So that's how this thing was formed. I mean, is that the creation process work? I mean, did you bounce ideas off each other the next day, or, what excited you?
Yeah. Well, it turned out that Eric, who I hadn't met before, and we met at that party, had shared an interest in history the way I did. So we sat down after the party and just said, what can we do with this? And as I said, we only had, maybe 10 ideas between us. And we said, well, that's not enough for a book. So that's what prompted us to then dive in to the library and online to do the research. But you're right to say that the creative process, which I'm engaged in every day with my business and with the book, it can come out of just anywhere. So that one came out of a party. You could argue that the book, the audiobook, I should say, came out of the pandemic. It's you never know when it's going to sort of drop into your consciousness. And when it comes and when it flows and when it happens, you just have to step out of the way of it and let it flow through. People talk about divine intervention. I don't want to go to that extent, but I do believe in inspiration.
Oh, yeah.
I do believe that there are forces in the ether out there that descend upon your brain and then make it the right time to explore that particular storyline, that particular narrative, that particular concept. And in this case, it was all about ideas, right, and the good ones and the bad ones. So we got 100 of them, and there are a lot of side stories as well that really explore all kinds of fashion, politics, entertainment, sports from the recent and distant past, and I think really humanize history.
All right. Well, I mean, library is one thing, but you talk about the research that you did into creating this audio book. I didn't realize that you had done the hardcover as well. How is that doing? Oh, that doesn't come out
well.
To when? Oh no.
It came out as a soft cover.
Oh,
it never
okay.
came out as a hardcover.
Right.
Because it was one of those books we thought would be good in airports and things like that, where you want it to be a little lighter and easier to pack when you go on your trip.
It's called a nice throwaway,
Yeah, exactly. And you can pick it up, put it down.
Leave it for someone else.
It's not a novel. Where you have to read it, chapter to chapter. This is, take 2 minutes, read a story, put it down. 2 days later, pick it up. Start in the middle, work backwards. It doesn't matter. It's just one of those kind of bite-sized books, which I think, by the way, Mark, is kind of in touch with the way people like to consume information today. They like it in bite-sized bits. They don't like long tomes and tirades from anybody. They like to just get it in small doses, and that's what we tried to do.
So it's even going to, suit those kleptomaniacs that love going to the back of a book first and then finding out who killed who. Okay. So when
Yeah, you can go backwards with it. It wouldn't hurt. Yes.
why did you decide? I guess really that you've already answered it, but why did you decide to do an audiobook version?
Well, when we looked at the stories, we said there's a lot of them here that we thought could come to life and be reach a wider audience of those who maybe don't even like to read. You know, we can bemoan whether or not that is good or bad for our culture, but I think there are a lot of people out there who are too busy or look at books as something they can do only in their extreme spare time. But an audiobook allows that information, that entertainment to be delivered to you in a different kind of a way. And it's the kind of thing, unlike a book that you have to hold in your hand, that you can listen to while doing something else, while puttering around the house, while exercising, while taking a walk, while working out at the gym, whatever it might be, just driving up to the store. With an audiobook now, you can absorb what it is we're trying to get across in a as entertaining a way as possible, and do it on your own time at your own pace without having to squirrel away time and dedicate time to picking up a book and reading it. We have nothing against books. In fact, we did a printed book version and it's done fine. But we just thought the audiobook would just add to the audience and add to the enjoyment.
Well, it's very easy. Put the things in your ears. You can just hit the play button and there it is, you know. It's not a lot of hard work. Speaking of work, I mean, how much work went into the production of the audiobook? Tell us about the process.
Okay, that's an interesting one. The printed book, as I mentioned, took about 3 years of research, probably another year of writing it and or getting a publisher for it. Getting a publisher for a book, as your audience may know, is always a trying process. We first got an agent, a literary agent, who liked it and said, well, I've got about a dozen publishers I think can maybe be interested in this kind of silly book. We went through 11 of them, and we got varying responses from, hey, sounds great, but it's not in our wheelhouse, to, you got to be kidding me, this is terrible, to finally, excuse me, we got down to the last two, actually, and two of them wanted it, thank God, and they got into a slight bidding war. And, I don't want to mislead your audience. As a first-time author, it's not like they were coming at us with, tons of money.
No.
But they did give us an advance, and we picked the one in Chicago called Source Books that we thought had a good feel for the material. And it took a while. It takes a while to do the galleys, to get it printed, to get it marketed.
Right.
And so it finally came out. It did well. It's still available on Amazon and fine retailers everywhere, as they say.
Yeah.
But then
iTunes too, I think. iTunes have available.
Yeah. Then the audiobook, Mark, took a good year.
Wow.
Mostly during COVID, to get all of the horses together to record it. And then you've got to go through and do the selects process where you select the best takes. You cut it together. The book is 4.5 hours. I've never done a production. I'm used to doing 30-second spots and 3-minute videos. This was 4.5 hours of material. So it took a long time to, as I say, record, edit, mix, find the right music, get the music rights, find the right sound effects, put those into place, master it so that Audible would accept it. Audible has very stringent standards in terms of volume levels, file type, file size, chapterizing,
good,
all of that stuff. So, finally, a couple of months back, it came out as an audiobook, and that's been doing pretty well ever since.
You've turned me off wanting to do audiobooks.
No, I didn't mean that.
Man,
it's just
what
that
an
ours.
effort. Yeah. No, fantastic. And that's why it comes out so darn good. See, folks, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. I'm going to quote.
Yeah.
Here's another quote. Scrounging, and this one, if you're a baseball fan, you'd love this one. Scrounging for cash to finance his Broadway plays, Boston Red Sox owner Harry, I think it's Frazee. He decides to sell Babe Ruth to the Yankees. Now, Ruth proceeds to lead the Yankees to 7 championships in 15 years. And meanwhile, the Red Sox suffer 8 decades of failure, all attributed to the curse of the Bambino. So there you go. You never knew that one, did you? Huh?
No. The fact is that he was a pitcher is surprising to most people. So that when they sold him off, he was a pitcher, and the Yankees changed him over to a hitter, and he became, the all-time home run leader, a charter member of the Baseball Hall of Fame, the most popular and famous athlete of his time, and one of those iconic figures. And all the Red Sox could do is shake their head and go, "Oh, darn, we missed that one, didn't we?"
Right. Hey, Michael N. Smith, what were some unexpected facts that you learned in your research?
Well, let me give you, if you've got a moment, I can give you the story.
Yeah, we got a few minutes
one.
left, baby. Yeah.
Okay. Let me give you the story of New Coke. And I'm talking about Coca-Cola here, not the other substance.
Yeah.
And we call this one New Coke's product launch goes from fizzy to flat. And the bad idea here is to change the flavor formula of the world's most popular soft drink. And the geniuses behind it, as we say, are the senior executives of the Coca-Cola Company. And this goes back to 1985. So we are in the bubbly affluence of post-World War II America, and Coke is the cola preferred by 60% of the market. Yet by 1983, there's a pesky rival named Pepsi that has begun to outsell Coke among the very coveted youth demographics. So eventually, Coke's market share sinks to 24%, and Coke's CEO, Roberto Goizueta, orders a rethinking of the company's entire operations. Even their century-old secret formula gets reevaluated. So despite a generations-long reign as the world's top-selling soft drink, the real thing, as they called it, in the heat of competition, and they're ready to make this fateful change. So Coke researchers fan out across America armed with trial samples of New Coke, which is a slightly sweeter, more Pepsi-like take on the traditional soda flavor. And in blind taste tests, consumers choose New Coke over both Coke and Pepsi by pretty wide margins. But in focus groups, where you get more qualitative data, more opinion-based data, New Coke is met with a lot less enthusiasm. Still, they're thirsty for a winner, so Coke launches the new taste of Coca-Cola to mark the company's 100-year centennial celebration. And immediately, Coke loyalists go from fizzy to flat. Within days, the company receives over 400,000 distraught calls and angry letters. A psychiatrist is brought in to evaluate the tenor of the consumer calls, and he says that they sound like people mourning the loss of a loved one. Even Fidel Castro criticizes the move as another example of American decadence. So with boycotts looming just 3 months, Mark, after its historic birth, New Coke is history. Traditionally formulated Coke is now called Coca-Cola Classic, and it's reintroduced. And after hundreds of millions of dollars spent testing and marketing New Coke, executives conclude that they had simply underestimated the public's deep and abiding emotional attachment to the original. And the afterthought on that one, as we call it in the book, is a lot of conspiracy theorists claim that maybe this was a ploy all along by Coca-Cola marketers to reinvigorate sales of the original Coke. And to which, this is a great quote from that same CEO, Roberto Goizueta. He said, "We at Coca-Cola are neither smart enough nor stupid enough to come up with that strategy."
Well, wow. Yeah, what do you say to that? Tell us about a very important thing. I love this idea, what you're doing, about your outreach to schools to promote the awareness of, and in fact, the appreciation for history.
Yes. Well, when my son was in grade school a few years back, we would sit in on some classes, and the school day would go by, and I'd say, "They're not learning anything about history, really? It's sidestepped in favor of math and science. I mean, I understand those are the hot button subjects of the day, but what about history? I would even say, what about geography? What about what we used to call social studies back in the day?"
Yeah.
That stuff is pretty much sidestepped these days. So I vowed upon beginning to write this book that I wanted to do at least some, small effort to change that. So, I looked around and said, well, how could we do that? And I said, well, as we write the book, let's write it in a very accessible, human way. And, probably high school students or upper level 7th, 8th grade, junior high students, as well as college students might enjoy a humorous, irreverent look at history that bypasses the dates and the dead guys that I keep referring to, but rather gets into the very human qualities that make history resonate today, so that they can look at the people and the events and say, that's a lot like me. I can learn from that. I can make sure that I don't throw aside a 100-year-old formula to a successful product in favor of doing something completely boneheaded, or just in their daily life, understand the people they meet or the countries they visit in a more context or contextual way. So that is our intent in making donations, I should say, to schools.
Right. And I know we didn't want to touch on politics, but you've got to look at, a recent bad idea that you've probably taken note of. And at the end of the day, today's history, well, not that they're interested kids in politics, but maybe some of the younger ones are. There's other ways this could have happened, for sure. It is history repeating itself. And I remember the days of Saigon and that whole Vietnam era. So it tells you my age, but at the end of the day.
No, well, me too. Me too. I was there for that too.
Well, sure. Listen, my friend, what's next for 100 of the worst ideas in history?
Well, we're thinking about, speaking of schools, doing a traveling roadshow where we come in with the audio tracks. We put the pictures to it. We have an interaction of Q&A with the students. And we think that may be a very nice adjunct to the printed book, the audiobook, and a way to further engage and open up the whole idea of history learning to schools. So we have that in the plans, and who knows, there may be 100 more of the worst ideas in history coming down the track as well. I'm talking to my publisher about that now.
Yeah, well, it's a great way of learning. People do learn by laughing and learn by other things. And, to think about this, when it's like pantomimes, it's like going back to the days where kids laugh their heads off in a room full of an assembly. We used to have a ball doing those. Guests would come in and talk. And I could see this, and I could even see it going into maybe an online series.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I'm glad you brought that up. We are in talks with some distribution companies about making it a streaming show, whether it be one story per show for a couple of minutes, or put a bunch of them together and make it a 15 or 20-minute show.
Right.
But yes, we are thinking about that as well. So thanks for bringing that up.
That's good. That's great, mate. Well, look, we're out of time. Folks, I want you to understand that this is a book for dads, grads, students, summer travelers, anyone who hears you remember good old Cliff Clavin in that show. God, I love that show. It was huge. Even in Australia, it was #1. And I haven't been to the bar yet. I mean, I'm in Tucson, Arizona. I'm dying to get over there, and I believe the bar's still there. Is that right? Do you know that?
It is still there, and they did a franchise for a while too. And I remember there was one in O'Hare Airport that actually had a mannequin of Cliff and Norm sitting at the end of the bar there. Very funny.
Oh, well, you know that guy I'm talking about, all yammering on at the end of the bar, and he longs to say, "Oh yeah, I can top that one." It's designed to give you the ammo to unseat that inebriated windbag and rise to your proper place as the smartest, coolest, grooviest guy or girl in the room. Oh yeah, 100 of the worst ideas in history. Humanity's thundering brainstorms turned blundering brain farts. And Mr. Kassem, Eric Kassem, and our good friend who's been on for a little while here, Michael N. Smith, put it all together. I wish you all the best in the world. It is available, again, just to remind people, Amazon, of course. What else? Audible and iTunes. And where else, man? Have you got your own site it can be picked up on as well? Or
yes, it's at 100worstideas.com, and that's the number 100. worstideas.com. You can get it there as well. And find retailers everywhere, as they say, Mark.
Oh, as well as. And there's more.
Yes, there could be more. Stay tuned.
You might get the hardcover with it if you're good.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, don't
just give me 3 years. Yeah. Give me 3 years in the library, and I'll be back to you.
Well, fabulous. Thank you, Michael N. Smith. Good luck with it. It's absolutely amazing, and I wish you well.
Thank you, Mark. Great to be here.